and welcome back to my channel. I know I'm doing a lot of videos at the moment. I don't know, I'm just in a bit of a role with them, and sometimes I just like doing videos. Makes me feel like I'm doing something semi-productive anyway, reaching out to people because I'm stuck at home. So yeah, it's just kind of like a little bit of an update video, and also I wanted to carry on talking about empathy as well. I just had a nice lunch. I treated myself to cheese, apple, it was grated cheese, grated apple, mayonnaise and walnut sandwich. It was, I don't know if you recall, but some time back I reviewed a vintage tea book that I got, so it was a recommendation in there. So I decided to try it out. I did it on white bread, just because sometimes I do like white bread. I know it's not the healthiest, but you don't always have to be healthy, and actually it wasn't too unhealthy. It was mayonnaise, apple, walnut, and mayonnaise, walnut, apple and grated cheese, basically. I did have 2 Florentine biscuits, a little bit naughty. My dad got them for me a while back, but they're not something I would choose. They're not my favourite biscuits. I find them a little bit like, because I don't often eat biscuits, you know, I only have biscuits very occasionally as a treat. But they're not really my favourite. I found them a little bit too sickly sweet for me, and like a bit, they're not the biscuits I go to. I put the rest in the freezer because you have to like eat them within 3 days after opening, and there's no way I can do that. So I put the rest in the freezer to keep for later. I mean, they're okay. I don't dislike them, but they're not my go-to biscuits, Florentines. I find them rather sweet, and they're also quite sticky and hard to eat because of all the caramel. I wouldn't really say they're my favouriteest ones. Say my dad got them for me around my birthday time because he likes them, but they're not actually my favourite. They're not the sort of ones I would choose, but yeah, I put the rest in the freezer, so they are, because I will eat them, it's just they're not like my favouriteest. I think I prefer shortbread, actually, that's my favouriteest. I'm not so keen on like really sweet stuff, so I found it a little bit, yeah. But it was still nice, and it was nice putting out all my nice teaware, which I like to do, my nice teapot, my nice Wetro teacup and things like that. So that's what I had for lunch. And then in the morning I did a little bit of embroidery because I got a Klutz craft kit some time back. It's like an embroidery starter kit because embroidery is something I quite like to learn more about because yeah, and I find it quite calming. You do have to think when you're doing it because it's something you have to do very, very slowly and carefully. So it does like force you to slow down, which I can find quite difficult. But once I'm in that kind of mode though, and it's got me into that kind of slowing down sort of meditative state, as it were, it is quite calming. I can only do it for a small amount at a time though, because it is quite hard to kind of like, you know, to focus like that for long. So I pace myself. But yeah, it's an embroidery starter kit, so it like teaches you the very basic stitches, you know, using it's got a little what do you call it? My brain's gone. You know, embroidery hoop, that's it. It's a little small embroidery hoop though, and some fabric, you know, with ready prepared patterns on there. They're like cute patterns, so I'm doing the hedgehog, so I'm just like embroidering a hedgehog's quills, which is a very simple straight stitch. That's like very basic, but it gets more complicated as you go on though. So it starts very basic and then you get slightly more complicated as you go along. So it's just like getting you into it. Because you have embroidery starter kits are quite good because, like, you know, they teach you the basics, and then you know, you can then make progress, as it were, and like ultimately maybe go and do your own embroidery and stuff. It just sort of teaches you as you go along, like gradually, which is really good. So yeah, so I'm doing that, and then I'm looking forward to hanging them up, because you can like it gives recommendations for what you can do with them. Like you can sort of hang them up like as a sort of garland. Which looks quite fun, and now I can put them up, which would be a nice decoration because they're really cute. It's like sort of kawaii embroidery, like sweet, cute, nice embroidery. So yeah, so that's what I did this morning. So yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about empathy from where I carried off last time. I need to train myself to try and look at the camera. I know I keep on looking off to the side, I can't help it. I'm not very good at looking at the camera, I can probably tell. Yeah, what I was saying, I was talking about empathy, and In the last video, I was talking about Simon Van Cohen and his idea around autism and empathy, and the confusions around autism and empathy. And and I now feel there has been this kind of almost defensive reaction against this lack of empathy in autism, which has been misinterpreted, completely misconstrued, I think, by the general public because of a layperson's understanding of empathy to mean like not caring, when that isn't actually what empathy is. Empathy is like a massive kind of thing. It includes many, many different components. And yeah, there are parts of empathy that can affect caring, but those parts are generally intact in autism. It's when we say autism is an empathy disorder, we're referring more to cognitive empathy, which is basically also known as theory of mind. It is true that autism can also affect effective empathy as well, although that isn't a defining characteristic of autism. A defining characteristic of autism is the deficit of theory of mind, and that's said to be sort of intrinsic to autism. And although it is true, though, that problems with theory of mind can occur in other conditions, the extent of the problem is only really seen in autism when it's like so bad. When it's like that severe, you can only really be autistic and have a deficit of theory of mind that is that severe. Other conditions can cause problems with theory of mind. Like I know other psychiatric conditions sometimes can just temporarily reduce theory of mind. Maybe like if a person, I don't know, if someone's very, very, very depressed, for example, that can affect their theory of mind just because they can't think, so they're kind of more in a sort of self state in a way. But that's often a temporary reduction, whereas autism is a fundamental problem that the person's born with. But yeah, effective empathy in autism isn't necessarily impaired. So in other words, someone can have intact effective empathy and be autistic as long as they have problems with theory of mind, because that is the defining feature. So there will always be an empathy problem in autism. Cognitive empathy will always be more or less impaired. Obviously, it depends on the individual how impaired the cognitive empathy is. I guess in like very, very profound autism, where the person's often non-verbal and has an associated intellectual disability, that deficit of theory of mind can be really extreme. In so-called higher functioning autism, the theory of mind deficit may not be as pronounced, it might be a lot more subtle, and some people with higher functioning autism can pass the theory of mind test that they sometimes give, and the problem is often only found on far more subtle tests. So the problem is still there, it's just that the person, because they have like a higher IQ and good grasp of language, can sometimes sort of work their way around the problem using alternative routes, like compensating for it. So they could kind of like achieve some degree of theory of mind. It's not like they're completely without it. It's just that it's achieved through a different route to like non-autistic people, and is often more laborious and has to be thought out more because it doesn't come naturally to them. But there will still be some problems with theory of mind. It's just, as like I said, the extent of that will vary. So it's not always the case that someone will be completely without theory of mind. That would be extreme. That would like usually only in like really extreme types of like autism, non-verbal autism, and so on. It's a spectrum of deficit, basically. But that is the defining feature of autism, yes. And I know I do struggle with theory of mind. When I was a kid, this problem was obviously a lot worse than what it is now. As I've got older, I have, I would say I do have some theory of mind now. It's just that I've got some theory of mind, but it's achieved via intellectual analysis, reading, and things like that. In real life social situations, I can't use what I've learnt to navigate the social world. I massively struggle with relationships, with making friends, with keeping friends, and that's because I find people incredibly confusing. Like I cannot get what's going on in their heads. I can't relate to them, basically. And I would say for me that I do feel that my effective empathy is also slightly impacted by my autism. And when I say that, I'm trying to say it I don't want people to get the wrong idea here. Like, as I've already said in previous videos, I'm a very sympathetic person. I don't want to cause suffering, and I do care about people. And I'm a very moral person. When I say that I do feel parts of my effective empathy have been affected by autism, what I'm trying to say is, if I'm, say, with someone who is, let's try to think of an example. Someone's talking about something bad that's going on for them, okay? They might even have just announced that they have, like, an awful disease or something. And I don't know how other people respond, because I'm not another person, and it's possible other people also don't always respond empathically. Maybe because that would be exhausting, and sometimes people do switch off their empathy, because otherwise it could actually be catastrophic for us. So I don't know how other people respond, but I do feel I have an empathy problem of some description, where I'm not quite resonating with them or feeling enough for them in that situation. I feel bad about it, because I think to myself, I beat myself up about it, and I worry that I'm a cold, horrible person. So I do actually get quite, it's not something about myself I like, because I worry that I'm not caring enough. But as I said before, I do care about other people. So it's definitely not that. It's like I'm just not switching on any emotional part of my brain when they're talking about something bad that's happening to them. And I sort of feel I should be feeling sorry, but I'm not feeling sorry, I'm not feeling anything. And that's why I do feel I have a problem with empathy, and it's not something I feel good about. It's like I can't help it. Like, nothing happens in my brain. Like, I know I should be feeling concerned, but I'm not. And if it was someone in my family, by the way, I would feel concerned. Oh my god, if that was my brother, I'd be absolutely devastated. I want to make that quite clear. So this shows that in actual fact, and when it turned out my mum had cancer, I was devastated, at least initially, until I'd processed it. So I'm talking about, I don't know how other people respond, say if they're with someone I don't know very well. Maybe it's just I haven't emotionally bonded with that person, in which case maybe it's not such a bad thing. So, because obviously if it happened to someone I had emotionally bonded with, I'd be absolutely devastated. So let me know what you think, because I actually don't know, because I don't really speak to that many people. Are you supposed to feel really concerned if someone you don't really know or have formed a connection to suddenly says they have a horrible disease? Are you supposed to feel really concerned? Or is it normal, basically, not to feel much? So do let me know, because it might actually be more normal than I think it is. Maybe it's not possible to. It's just that and I do wonder though, where sometimes people fake empathy when they're not actually feeling much. I don't know whether this is the case. It's only because sometimes, and this is when I sometimes are aware whether I have problems with empathy, because I'm trying to think, when I used to volunteer at AGK, and people would talk about not so nice things that were happening and stuff, and everyone was like, oh, isn't it awful, I'm so sorry, and I was standing there and I wasn't literally feeling anything, and then I sort of think I'm really cut off from other people, and I'm just not feeling the empathy you're supposed to feel, but I can't turn it on when I'm not feeling it, and yeah, so that's why I sort of have thought whether I might have a problem with effective empathy, but clearly I do care about people. And like I said, if there's anyone in my family, I'll be absolutely devastated. So maybe it's just that I can't feel empathy unless I really know the person well. Maybe that's what it is, because I haven't bonded with them. But it's not like I don't care intellectually. I wouldn't wish them harm or anything, and I don't want them to be ill or anything. It's just that I can't, my emotions don't get switched on in that way, because I sort of see other people getting really emotional even about people they don't even know, and I can't do that. It's not like I don't care, but because I don't know them, I can't get that emotionally involved. I think that's the thing, because I don't know them, I just can't get emotionally involved in that way. So I can't really empathise like that unless, so yeah, that's why I sometimes feel like I don't lack effective empathy, but it's often it's not switched on. It's but that might also be maybe because I get overwhelmed by emotions, and it's kind of, in a sense, self-preservation, and also because I've got loads and loads of anxiety. So basically I'm always dealing with stuff, and I'm constantly trying to keep my anxiety under control. So if someone kind of said something horrible, it's almost like maybe it's like my brain is just naturally trying to protect itself from like an absolute onslaught of like anxiety, so it just shuts down or something. I don't know, maybe that's what it is. But it does make me worry sometimes about being a not very nice person, but it might just be a normal thing because I wouldn't know because I don't talk to other people. And obviously if my emotions aren't being switched on, then it's not like something I can control. You can't force your emotions to be switched on when they're not. I have a feeling that some people try and force that, and then it's basically just fake, because you can't force yourself to feel something you don't feel. I sort of feel like as long as you're a nice person and you're nice to other people, maybe it doesn't really matter anyway. But it's not like you can force yourself to feel something you don't feel. So maybe that is a problem with effective empathy, but like Simon Van Cohen said, at least I have a really strong moral compass and a systematising brain, so I can kind of still be compassionate. It's just that I think sometimes people might see me as a bit cold because I don't always show the emotion when they're expecting it, basically. And also when my mum died, although like at first I was really, really upset and cried and stuff, because basically I don't cry in front of other people. Because I don't like showing emotions around others, and I just don't like doing it, so it's very rare that I'll cry. It does sometimes happen when I'm like really like in meltdown or whatever, I can't control it, but normally I don't like crying in front of other people, and also I tend to deal with emotions on my own, so I think that can then make people think I don't care, or that it's just that I deal with stuff differently, and also I'm very matter of fact and logical about things, so I do have emotions, but then my logic comes in really, really quickly, and it's almost like my logical brain says, we can't be upset forever sort of thing, you need to shut it off now. So I'll go through the crying thing, but I think I come out of it a lot quicker than other people, because I'm so logical, and I think that then makes people think I don't care. It's just that like it's almost like my brain cannot deal with too much emotion, and it kind of basically sees emotion as threatening, and then it basically will rapidly shut up. It like there'll be an initial outpouring, but then the brain kind of like shuts it off because it just can't deal with anymore, sort of thing. And I have a feeling that might be some internal kind of self-preservation strategy that kind of protects me from too much emotion because I can't deal with it. But yeah, let me know what you think. So I'm going to move over to video number 2 now. I want to carry on this discussion about autism and empathy and my feelings around it. So moving over to video number 2 now.